Good evening. Welcome to the Balanced Excellence Show. My name is BJ Stanley. This is my partner, JB Conti. And as usual, we're going to start out with the positive story of the week.
Thank you, VJ. Read an article and did a little research on a particular program that caught my eye. And it was a coach who's doing it the right way, it would appear, and revolutionizing, I'd like to think, the recruiting industry. What this woman is doing, and she is the girls basketball coach at Fordham University, which Division I guess it would be ladies basketball coach or women's basketball coach. She is recruiting players and showing them how and encouraging them to graduate in 3 years, take the fourth year of their scholarship, and put that as a grad student towards their master's. So ultimately, she's trying to get 2 degrees for the price of 1 scholarship and encouraging the girls to do it. Now, how does that happen? Well, if they graduate in 3 years, that means taking an extra course every semester or so. It might mean taking a summer course, but she's willing to make some compensations. She tells the girls they can graduate in 3 years. If they have lab work, they can miss practice if necessary. If they have an exam, a big exam that's coming up, leave practice early, get a little more studying in. She's willing to bend. Ultimately, it's about showing these girls, these ladies, these young ladies, that there is a career after college, and she's helping them position themselves for it. So I like the idea. She's kind of using the system to benefit the kids and really looking out for their good fortune. Kind of different approach to recruiting, and she looks for highly motivated overachievers. Ultimately, not the entire program takes advantage of it. Maybe 3 or 4 girls on their current roster are doing it, but a number of them have taken advantage of that. And nice story. Puts the girls first.
Yeah, and the other excellent thing about that story is that at some level or at some point, she figured out 2 things. This way's not working for the long-term benefit of the girls, but more importantly, if I keep doing what everybody else is doing, I'm just an imitator. And therefore, the children, and they're still children, I'm sorry, if they're college kids, they're still children. I mean, JB said girls and women and ladies, they're still children. But she's figured out that if she models that, even if the kids don't do that for her, all don't graduate. And yes, they're going to take extra courses, absolutely. They're going to have to take summer school courses, and the colleges may or may not cover that. But the huge but to that is, if they get done, and if their scholarship gets that first year of the grad school from Fordham University, they have a leg up on even regular students who have debt, because this debt, as you know really well, JB, with your business, is that this debt is just crippling. I think it's over $3 trillion now. Is that correct?
1.3 trillion.
There's a 3 in there.
It is bigger than our credit card debt in the country. So, and it's not getting any smaller. It's getting bigger exponentially.
And if these girls, through the coaches, mentoring, modeling, realize how important it is to balance their life out instead of, because if they're at the Division I level, and basketball is what we call a head count sport versus an equivalency sport, it's very important to know that. But JB, if they're getting that full scholarship to play basketball, and just because they're playing Division I doesn't mean they get a full ride, and even if they're on a team with full rides, they don't have to fully fund them. There's a whole bunch of things go on. But what they're learning is that if you have these life skills, and everybody's been telling you how great you are and blah, 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 but if you learn these life skills, eventually you'll figure out the balance that you need in your life for yourself without having it be this huge wall that hits you when you're done playing sports.
Exactly. The young ladies that graduate from this program are certainly positioned much better than a number of their peers in other programs. And this approach to recruiting sets Fordham University apart and is unlike any other school in the country.
I'll be very interested to see if anybody starts following that. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Balanced Excellence Show. This segment is VJ's Quote of the Week, and this is my favorite quote. It's not my job to decide when, how, or even if the light goes on. My goal is to just keep flipping the switch. Kind of like this lady at Fordham.
Yep, keep them engaged, keep flipping the switch, keep them energized and challenged.
And the thing is, they need the internal realization for, and I'm going to bring it right down, grocery shopping, bank check, drive which car to buy, the apartment, the house, all these things they need to internalize. I've said this on numerous occasions, is that we really just teach our children to be more better students. We're not teaching them life in a lot of instances. But our job as adults is not to partner with these kids, but is to keep giving them opportunities and sometimes to fail and not being a failure. There's a big difference. But give them opportunities and we show them certain things and then let them figure it out for themselves.
Failure gives us the opportunity to start over again more intelligently.
And except in my case. But the other thing, Bees, that I want to go over with this is that as these kids are going through this, and right now we just happen to be talking about sports, but truly it's a microcosm of life. But if they're going along, this is the safest spot to fail. So if we keep showing them alternatives and give them the encouragement, and I'm not talking about coddling. This is entirely different. We're still holding accountable. But we get these kids, and you have seen it, and when I'm going to ask JB this question, we didn't rehearse it, but watch his face when I ask him this question. How great is it when you see this kid who struggled playing for you, and then all of a sudden the light goes on and he has a great game? There it is.
That is.
Did we rehearse this?
Right. No, absolutely not. But that is the ultimate reward.
And you can literally visualize, if I give you enough time, the kid in the instance.
Yeah.
And that's what these kids hold on to. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. This week's interview is with Callie Watkins, the head football coach at Schrader High School. And let's again, we're staying in this genre. How about the rules? And how about the refereeing? And how about that? Because aren't you subconsciously learning life skills here? Tell me how you handle disputes.
It's a sports game. You handle it where you have to respect each other's call. You know, if you make a call and it's borderline judgmental, then you know what? It's the respect of the game, respect your friends. You're going to respect it. They respect your calls, and in turn, you respect their calls.
And how healthy is that?
Very healthy. It's life skills. It's working in a work environment where you don't agree with something, but you know what? You suck it up and you do it anyway for the betterment of the game or the team for that matter.
And now our first tough question of the interview. Then why has that been lost on youth sports? Everything you've said in the last 10 minutes is positive, growing, and excellent. People are getting better. Why did it stop going into youth sports?
Can't be definite on that. I'm just going to say it's the aspect of a lot of selfishness maybe out there. The selfishness of I want to get this scholarship to college, the selfishness of I want to win this many state titles, the selfishness of, you know, I want my program to get better so that we can have more kids come into the program and in turn valuing, you know, getting more success. Not definite on it, but that's just my take on it.
Okay, and again, let's stay with that. In that context, though, again, what you were just talking about with pickup games, isn't it long-term detrimental for these coaches in these organizations to feel that way? Because then they don't win, because the very thing that you're saying leads to winning, they're not doing.
In the long run, I definitely think so, because you lose that that fire that started when you're 8, 9 years old playing with your friends. You lose that free spirit of competition. You know, because now it turns into a business. Again,
in this, Callie, the coaches then are playing, quote unquote, their best players because they want to, staying in this line of thought as it's changed. However, what you're saying, and please tell me if we're right in hearing you, is that you don't play your best players, you play the players that are playing best because that keeps the competition. Otherwise, we have entitlement.
Absolutely, that's how it is. When you and a lot of times I tell my players, it's physically wise, talent wise, there are people who are superior, but they don't always reach their maximum potential. And like you said, and that's a great quote, you don't play your best players, you play your players who are playing the best. That comes from an effort standpoint that we as coaches value. Kids giving their maximum effort and trying to maximize their potential.
Pretty powerful stuff from a ex-Division I football player, but he really touches on some key points, is that the pickup games, and you and I are old, but remember the pickup games between friends versus some other group you didn't, it was much more intense and it was much more competitive.
Oh, some of your biggest rivalries were against your best friends.
Yes.
I enjoyed hearing him speak, Coach, there, and it's nice that he understands what you and I call free play, and having the opportunity without the constrictions of suffocating adult supervision. I often wondered, I'll put it into football terms or football perspective. If you're a 6'3", 280-pound lineman who all of a sudden is an 8th grader, has to play receiver in a pickup game, now he understands how important it is to hold his block because he can't run a deep route. So now he understands how important it is when he goes back to his interior lineman position to hold his block so that as a receiver, he can run, instead of a 5-yard route, a 15 or 20-yard route. So getting the perspective from different positions, and free play is where you find it. Backyard, you learn the entire game, as opposed very often to the suffocating, controlling, adult supervised, if you will, game.
And he also mentions, when I ask him about refereeing, and it really is, refereeing is such a thorn in my side. The number one thing for refs is experience. So the more you pick on them, the more they quit. The more you get less experience. So you're actually enhancing your own problem. But what he said about with they do their own officiating is that you respect the other guy's call, whether you agree with it or not. But that doesn't inhibit the game going forward. Or when he talked about when you have a lopsided score. And so, yeah, you want the games to be more competitive. I say this over and over again. At this day and age, right now, your best team is 500 at the end of the season. Can you explain that to the people?
Well, it gives everybody the opportunity to contribute, and you're developing the entire team rather than isolating one kid play after play after play after play after play, where sometimes it's almost counterproductive.
And the games are close. If you're 5-5,
yeah,
the games you're in some really good games, and that's the competition. The last thing we wanted to talk about with the interview is how he talked about the team concept is getting broken, and more people, because of the Division I scholarship, the race that doesn't exist, or that the carrot is out there, that you helping me get better and me helping you get better isn't even close to a priority anymore.
No longer a priority. It is not. It is about the skills of the individual, the benefit of the individual. Got to get me, got to get mine, got to get it now. But I do, maybe later in this podcast, I will give you my solution to all of it. I have one way to fix it.
We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. This segment is when I go off on a tangent, and today's tangent is simply manners. Whether it's the directional signal, which you've heard me talk about before, or holding a door for someone, or saying please, or saying thank you, we've lost that sense of connection. And whether it's the phones, or whether it's all the outside noise, whether it's the pressure on people. But JB, I'm just struck. I had a conversation with my wonderful daughter yesterday about manners and stuff, and she says adults and people, because Clayton and her and Molly are so well-mannered, that it's easily noticeable, but also helpful. I mean, it's not.
So, and so you get complimented, you have such nice, well-mannered children. Well, no, I don't. They're just what I think are typical, normal children with simple, basic, civilized behavior. And it's funny that now what you and I, or what a lot of people think is simply civilized behavior, is standing out as incredibly kind and considerate and respectful behavior.
Yeah, it was, again, you see, I always go off on this tangent, but one of Molly's coaches, Dana, just, I can't, just think the world of this guy. But we went out to lunch one day, and I was saying to him, he had the kids, he's the one that had the kids laying down on the ground mentally and or mentally visioning things. But I'm going to tell you this story about a winter thing with him at one of these podcasts. It was absolutely phenomenal. But what I said to him is the thing that bothers me most about your team, and it really does bother me, and I could actually see him stiffen up, is that you're an anomaly. Your manners, how well, the girls don't yell at each other, they don't bark, they're positive, they're supportive. If somebody makes a mistake, they're helpful. They don't complain about playing time. And it was just so warming to me to watch this. And it just made me think again, this is just simple manners. And when did this become the outlier?
Good point. I encourage teams that I'm associated with, and I challenge them, I guess, be as kind as you possibly can for the next 2 hours that you're engaged in this activity. That means if somebody hands you a glove, you say thank you. If someone is struggling with equipment, go give them a hand, help them, say thank you. And it doesn't lessen, that doesn't mean you're any less of a competitor. It doesn't mean that your skills are compromised or your determination is lessened. It just means that you're an honest, decent, respectful member of this team, and ultimately you're a cornerstone for the team and you're a spokesman for the team.
And they're opponents, not enemies. If you were to just, and I say this often and people will have a hard time with it, you just switch coaches on these teams. Mm-hmm. Because all the kids, if I take a kid, 5 kids from the United States at birth and bring them to Russia and take 5 Russian kids for the United States kids were raised as Russians and ours are, the Russian kids are raised as Americans. And so they're still just kids. Mm-hmm. So you should be able to switch, and I tell coaches this, to another opponent's team. 1, not have a difficult time coaching, but 2, being able to understand as you're coaching that if that team plays well and your team plays well, everybody benefits.
Yeah, right.
We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to JB's Mind Favorite segment. Today's 2 Dads at the Fence, and I will be taping my son playing in an AAU basketball game. And here we go. Hey, JB, thanks for coming today to help me with the taping here.
Oh, I think it's going to go really well. I can't wait to see the finished product and get it up and out there.
Yeah, I had to spend $3,000 on this camera, but it streams right to the internet.
Oh,
that
boy.
means I could send, a college coach could actually watch my son play.
Oh, my goodness, what an opportunity.
I can't believe other people don't have this.
I don't see any other fathers with this technology.
Then they obviously don't care. Oh, wait, I don't want to miss. He's back on the court.
He's out there. He's out there now. Make sure you get this. Oh, here comes a 3-on-2. Make sure you pick him up on the wing there.
Oh, my gosh. Look at that. That is just fantastic.
That's going to come out great.
You know what I think is maybe we should just get with the streaming live. Maybe we should get don't you have a friend that can do websites? Maybe we should just have a website for him. He's 12.
Idea. Yeah. And then, you could get him all over the country in a blink of an eye. You're going to get his word out there. That's great.
Wow, Bees, look, holy crap. Look, you can see how much better he is than the other kids.
Well, make sure you focus in on him. Make sure you zero, maybe you can zoom and
we're going to
follow
zoom.
that.
Well, the other thing is, though, is when he gets home tonight, I should have this thing ready, right? I mean, isn't there a program?
I would say
where-
even before you sit down for dinner, you might want to point out some of the strengths and obviously some of his weaknesses too that he can improve on.
Well, I think I'm going to have to get a professional editing service. I have to ask our producer, hey,
Maybe
Gary.
get
There
some-
should be a professional editing to this thing, right?
Get a soundtrack on it.
Absolutely. And then, what I think I need to do is break some of this down, like highlight segments and then get some music to it.
Freeze frame some of the key spots.
I mean, I don't even know what streaming to the internet means, though. I don't know.
Sounds cool to me.
Well, yeah, when the guy sold me the camera, he said, this is it. So this is the one to have.
Did you tell your wife you spent $3,000 on a camera?
Why would I do that?
Good point.
Holy moly. Look, okay. Now, tell me now why. The coach has to know I'm taping, right? He's got to know the expense of this camera. He took him out of the game.
He's looking up here.
Yeah, look at my son. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Look, I got the camera. I got everything here.
Get Clarence back in the game.
Come on. Oh, my gosh, guys. Look, it doesn't. How does it matter that we're up 30 points? What?
We got to talk to him.
Oh my gosh! Hold on. What? I'm going to get him on the bench because he's got to. Holy moly! Wow. Hey, you know what, Bees?
What do you see?
I think that's a scout. I'm just going to
Maybe it's-
zoom in on him.
Maybe it's Villanova.
Whoa! Wow! Holy mackerel! Well,
Take a
everybody's
picture,
going to want to
yeah,
see this.
let him know that we see him here
Yeah.
and send it to
Hey!
his staff. Hey, over here.
Over
Go-
here,
Go
yeah.
Wildcats. Ladies and gentlemen, the names were changed to protect the innocent. Please do not try this at home.
This week's rant is very near and dear to my heart, and I have been thinking about it for almost the entire week. And in this rant, I want to avoid lecturing, so JB will help me with this. Here is the rant. 12-year-old children are just children, and I'm hearing more and more where children have to decide whether they're going to play for their school or whether they're going to play for their travel. And so much so that they'll play for their travel and then just play for their school enough to get the eligibility to keep playing. But if they play too much for their school and miss a practice, and as Allen Iverson said, practice. We're talking about practice. Instead of playing a game. Now, they have to pass the puberty test. But if this kid or children, these kids, are playing well enough and they're playing against older kids, which, by the way, JB, I'm pretty sure once you get to college, they don't just let freshmen play against freshmen, and there isn't an age restriction either, is there? I didn't,
No.
Okay. All right. Even in varsity and high school, correct?
Right.
So we have this group of children growing up who, in some level, it's entitlement, okay? I don't have to go to every one of the practices. And I can still play. On the other hand, I'm on this club team with all the fancy stuff, and we're traveling, and it's really cool. And I have what I call the pay-for-play friends in the atmosphere that has in its integrity or internalization a thing that we're better than other people. And so now this boy, girl, can play for their club team in soccer, basketball, lacrosse, I don't care what, football, can have a great game. And they go back to their school and nobody gives a crap unless there's someone else at the school on the team. However, as a school person, they can play for their modified, their varsity, their JV, and get a whole week's worth of adulation from a game. And also, if they play badly, the consolation. But that sense of community that's not based on pay, that is so important to these young children in terms of learning life skills. Because at some level, if he doesn't play in the high school team and the high school team loses, I'm sure he's getting social media pressure. And so what I want to stress is that to both ends, for the schools, it's got to be tremendously angst pressure, because you really can't tell the kid no, because they'll go to the board. You can't, so that now the athletic director has a problem. So the coach has a problem. The other parents on the team see it. And to think that these kids don't see that and don't see that behavior and aren't getting a reaction from it to it, and a skewed, like I said earlier, this new normal. No, it's not normal. No, you don't get to change normal just because you think this is in or not. You don't get to make this, kids have phones now. That's not the new normal. It's not. It's a technology-driven change. Normal is still JB and I talking, our crack producer Gary at Rock Sports Net. I mean, we're communicating and trying to do things to get it better. And so when you isolate and automatically, by doing this, JB, have these kids say, okay, this one is better. But because you're better, you can come down back here and we'll still make room for you to play without thinking there's going to be any consequences.
So if developing a sense of community is important to your team, which it should be, it's very difficult with dual participation in sports. And we're seeing more and more of this. Hockey, soccer, I know. You cannot play for your school team if you play for our travel team. They're dictating, or you can't even go to be in the band or debate club. So it's getting more and more shoved down our throats, if you will. And it's very difficult to, I know some coaches, dual participation never works. There's always a rub. There's always a hiccup. And it's being fed, by the way, by social media as well. Why didn't you play for us? You left us hanging. Well, you guys were going to win without me anyways. Well, then it's very difficult to be 100% committed 80% of the time.
And it's really sending a difficult message to these kids that they shouldn't have to be, I don't like the word should. There's no reason in a growth, I'm going to use normal, in the normal cycle of childhood growth, that these kind of decisions should be forced on a 12-year-old. Sometimes they're practicing for their high school team and then going to their club team in the same evening, and then sometimes even with a personal trainer. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's no correlation to 70% of them quitting by the time they're 13. I'm sure there's no correlation to last year, 1.3 million children went to the hospital with overuse injuries, and only 800,000 of them were never touched. Now, you can get a puck in the face, you could trip, somebody could, so let's just say there's 50,000 of those. 800,000, 3,000 kids a day go to the hospital with injuries from overuse. So what we're saying is, this rant, is that as we're tugging and pulling on these kids, and JB has said this from the beginning once he joined our program, all we have to do is follow the money, isn't it?
Follow the money. The money changes everything. Think for a moment, I said earlier in the podcast, I've got a solution to all this craziness, this insanity. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Except for my kid.
Eliminate college scholarships. How would that impact youth sports? You would see it change dramatically.
That's our show. Thanks for watching. See you next week.